Welcome to EXPLORE-OVERLAND, and in this video we're going to go over the build of this Land Rover Discovery and how for very little money we've built a great all-round classic four-wheel drive. And adding to Land Rover Discovery's capability was the building of the bar work, which allows you to push up against things and get up on obstacles while protecting the vehicle on them and getting off them. Other than a mechanical Detroit locker in the rear and some 50mm longer shocks in the rear, this vehicle is nearly completely standard. We're going to be relying on Land Rover Discovery's key features, which are small, light and agile. And this, with its 100-inch wheelbase, make it exceptional off-road. Discovery 1 needs the smallest amount of modification to take you wherever you want. It is an absolute off-road legend straight out of the box. Discovery comes from a maker that has a heritage and a history of achievements like no one else. Discovery was used in the Camel Trophy and extreme off-road events ever since all around the world. And now this four-wheel drive can be picked up quite cheaply and turned into a great reconnaissance or escape vehicle. And watching this video as we now take it off-road and see just how easy it gets over and around the obstacles. During the video I'll take you through the general setup of the vehicle, and I'll take you through the storage system and why I built the things the way I did on this vehicle. But the main thing I want to do is show everybody that this can all be achieved for very little. Okay, so let's crack on. One of the things of owning a vehicle like this is you get great enjoyment out of knowing that you built it and it cost you very little. And buying a new one is not the same. You find yourself never wanting to take it anywhere near as far off-road. And I painted it in Sandglow, which is the Camel Trophy colour. And the reason I painted it that colour was I just wanted to keep it plain and industrial in the look. But then I got amusement out of the thought that I was never going to have to lock the vehicle, because who's going to pinch a yellow Land Rover Discovery? But the real problem is now I can't hide anywhere. The things I've enjoyed the most about doing the Discovery is the creativity involved in doing the bar work and other modifications, and the enjoyment of just working out how to get it to look, you know, more factory. I could have just went out and banged something on it and that would have done the job, but just trying to follow the factory lines and curves and making it more factory and tidy. And the strength of the bars was an absolute key factor. Knowing what the tracks are like now, where they're being ripped up and they're quite gnarly to get up and down, I knew that I'd be slamming into rocks and up against walls. So they had to be quite strong to endure all of the punishment that was about to get. And so far, they've done really well. It's had some serious hits. They've been bare metal many times and they've been touched up, but they've still protected the vehicle really well. Other things I took into consideration is, you know, when they're full of mud and they're wet, I've dimple dyed all the steps and reverse dimple dyed them so that when you're getting in and out, you're not sliding off the steps, or just working your way around the vehicle, whether you're loading the roof rack or something like that. You're not going to slip off because they're quite grippy. And with the rear step, you've probably seen throughout the video, you know, it comes out, you know, about 6 inches or something like that. But the original was out about the same. I didn't go crazy and cut the rear step right off to get a better departure angle. I used the rear step for, you know, loading the back of the vehicle and working off. But in general, you know, getting up onto the roof rack, loading the roof rack, you know, it's real handy to have that step there instead of cutting right back and then losing all that practicality. Sometimes you've just got to go a little bit easy and think about it. And when I was building the roof rack, you can see I've got the holes in the side of the rack, and they started off with a small bit at the back, and just to emulate the Camel Trophy sand ladders. But then the whole roof rack got out of hand, and now the holes go all the way around the roof rack, and the lights have been changed at the front about 4 times. But this is the final way, and I've welded the surrounds of the multiple lights into the front of the rack. And you know, that's great, it protects the lights, you know, branches coming over the top. And then also in the top of the rack here, I've got 2 jerry cans recessed into the top. So when the air comes up over the front, it breaks over the top of the jerry cans, you know, with very little drag. Not a huge difference, but a great fun doing it. And I've also got some rear work lights in the back that you can flick the switch underneath the dash. And at night when you're in the bush, you know, it gets hard to see or whatever, and you're in a tight spot, you can just flick that switch under the dash and the back of the car is daylight. And the other thing you might have spotted at the back, it's got the reversing camera. And that there is really, really handy. But I've got a nice shroud over the top so it doesn't keep getting knocked and moved all the time. And with the rack I was able to build it very light. I got it down to about 55 kilos, which for a roof rack is pretty good. But a good rack is everything when you're away four-wheel driving. You can load all the light gear up here, like the sleeping gear and that, and keep it out of the cabin so you can see out nicely four-wheel driving. But, you know, in emergency, it's a really great place to be. You can throw a swag up here and be high and dry when it gets wet. And the tie points in the roof rack, they're all cut in. As you know, most times when you tie something to a roof rack or you're tying it to bars, your ropes or straps slide up and down because there's nothing to hold them. And these work fantastic. They're very strong. You can put the strap over and ratchet strap your swag down so it's only about that bloody high, instead of getting around the bush looking like you're moving house. It's a track like this at Phone Track at Tullarook where the small and agile starts to come into play because of the chutes that you're stuck in and the big boulders within the chutes that throw you up and into the side of them. The smaller and lighter vehicles do really well here. Getting the big rigs up here, because it's clay in the base, is a big task in the wet. And you've got that advantage of just being lighter and being able to sneak up to things a bit easier rather than trying to get run-ups and smashing CVs and axles and all the other carnage that's laying around either side of this track. There must be at least 6 sets of side steps just in this chute alone. People have tried to take twin cab utes and that sort of thing up here with canopies, and you can just see where they must be smashing the side as they get thrown across on the big boulders on the way up. And it was a real challenge for Discovery to make it up here, especially with having all the big rigs out here the last 5 or 10 years, ripping it up with the big tyres. It's just made the track so difficult to get up without all that gear on it. Also, this is where Discovery's legendary field of vision comes into play on tracks like this. All the way up this track, you know and you can feel where you are. Most four-wheel drives, you sit down in the vehicle and it's very hard to see out. Whereas with Discovery, you've got that command driving position that Land Rover's famous for, where you're sort of looking down over everything, even outside the windows, but you're looking down over the dash, and even the bonnet on Discovery slopes away. So as you're coming up onto obstacles, you can clearly see where you need to be. This has got 560,000 kilometres on it, and it just bang, first thing in the morning, every time. Ultra reliable. You get the V8 petrol, and they are a great plaything for people that just want to have a bit of V8 fun. But the ultimate is definitely the diesel. You can cruise on the highway at highway speeds, no problem. You know, you want to go and do a tour of all the region or whatever, you can get in and out of the car and it's not a great big hassle. It's not like a four-wheel drive that you've had to lift 5 inches and you've put 37-inch tyres on, and it gets old really fast getting up and in and out of that thing. And as for a four-wheel drive, Discovery, in my opinion, is the greatest of all time. Simply because it's small, light, agile, extremely good on fuel, and it drives and handles really good on road. And then you can just rip up something like this and it will get up there no problem. No huge lifts, no big tyres, no fuss. Subscribe to the channel because I'll be taking the Discovery up all tracks like this, but I'll also be taking you to places, some of the really best hidden places within Australia. And Discovery can do both of those with ease. And that brings us to the storage system. And it's been done the same as the rest of the vehicle, out of repurposed aluminium and just, you know, scrap laying around. And I've made two little boxes either side of the main drawers. Then inside the drawers, I've got these tables that come out and mount on the back of the vehicle. They've got windshields on them that have just been painted white, so it's more reflective at night. And they swing around out of the way of the wind. Then I've got a 20-litre water container which I've mounted a 12-volt pump to, which runs underneath the drawer system, back out through the door and out to the back, so that you've got running water at the back of the car while you're out camping, which is always really, really handy. Then also at the back, I have a couple of voltmeters that keep an eye on the battery, one on the auxiliary, one on the main. And I've got some flush mounted Anderson plugs, again one on the main, one on the starter, one on the auxiliary. And then what I didn't mention before with the roof rack with the lights, I've also got two little lights, one either side, that just shine out of here when you've got those lights switched on at night time, so that when you open the doors and you're getting out, you can see where you are. Just that little bit handy for operating at night. And that's it for the storage system. And that's a good rundown of the vehicle in this video. There's many small tiny things that I've missed, which I'll go to on other future videos, but that's basically the vehicle. And really, without doubt, it's the best all-round classic four-wheel drive you can build for under $10,000. There's just nothing else like it. And as I've said throughout the video, especially that it's just so capable on and off-road. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching.